This is Angela Cozine again, and we are all here to talk about Thomas Jefferson and his legacy as a founding father of the country. And I want to focus on one specific part of his legacy, and that is his ideas on the separation of church and state. Now, I want to talk about this because, in my opinion, this ideas that he had about separating the church from the government was probably at the time one of the most radical ideas he had, and probably had one of the greatest, if not the greatest, effect on our country in the years to come. Now, the reason I believe that this was such a radical thing is because really it had not been heard of before. I wouldn't go so far as to say it had never been done, but at that time, it was really kind of a very new and very strange concept in the Western world. Now, Thomas Jefferson, he and James Madison, they together wrote the First Amendment, where it has that famous clause saying that the government shall make no law respecting religion or the establishment thereof, or something like that. Now, he later clarified this in a letter to James Madison, saying that there was to be a wall of separation between the church and the state, and this really was not a thing back then. It was not something that governments did, and it was, like many things that America was doing, and like Thomas Jefferson proposed, a very new and radical concept. In the European world at this time, there were state religions. That was the norm. Each country had its own church that was backed by the government, and that's just the way things were done. Even in the Netherlands, with their famous policy of religious toleration, that's really all it was a policy of toleration. They still had a state-mandated church that most people adhered to, even though they let other people of different religions live there. However, America was not like other European countries. In fact, it was very different. It was, from its beginning, a very diverse place. There were a cacophony, as it has been called, a patchwork of different cultures in what would become the United States. And a big reason a lot of them came over was because they were trying to escape the oppression of the state church. They wanted to worship God in the way that they saw fit, and they wanted to do that away from the prying eyes of the government and the church. And Thomas Jefferson really, I would say he wanted to preserve that. He wanted to preserve this kind of diversity, and he didn't want there to be any kind of oppression of or suppression of different religions that there had been in Europe. And he didn't want the government and the church too closely tied, because there usually tends to be, and he picked up on this, a lot of corruption that comes along with that when the church gets too much state power and then the state has too much of the backing of the church. And he saw this, and he wanted to do things differently. He wanted to set that precedent of the freedom of religion very early on, pretty much right away. And this made, I would probably say, the biggest impact on our country out of any of the ideas that he had, because this allowed not only a diversity of religion, but kind of a, if you will, where the church is able to be free from the constraints of the government, and people are able to choose freely to come to God or not to, without the pressure of the government behind them. And like I said, this was really a very radical and new thing that he was doing. But it turned out to, much like a lot of his other ideas, it soon spread around the world and to the other different European countries, and it soon became the rule rather than the exception. And that really speaks to, in my opinion, kind of the genius that Thomas Jefferson had in this idea. Um, and how really it shaped America in very large ways from the very beginning. All right, thank you very much.